Hi, this is Leo Knighton Tallarico. I am a spiritual guide and astrologer and co-director of the Spiritual Renaissance Center here in Portland, Maine. Our conversation today will be about this new eclipse season that has just begun and the kind of changes that we can all expect during that eclipse season. Let me first put it in a bigger perspective. Uranus square Pluto has been exact from 2012 through 2015. And that square between Uranus and Pluto is a big transformational movement in our world, in our personal lives and in the global world. And Uranus and Pluto, when they were conjunct in 1965 and 1966, they brought on the 60s revolution. And you know that 65, 66 was just the beginning of that revolution. A lot happened in the late 60s and the 70s to further it. So now with Uranus square Pluto, we're facing the same thing. This is the first major connection between Uranus and Pluto since 65 and 66. And you can see all the changes that are going on in our world and inside of us right now. And perhaps it's going to be even a bigger shift and more change and more transformation now than back then, because we're closer to the beginning and the cusp of the Aquarian age. Back in 65, 66, and late 60s and beyond, people were talking about the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And then that kind of got quiet for a long time. And now people are starting to talk that way again. And it's because Uranus and Pluto are making their first major aspect with one another since back then. So that's 2012 through 2015 that they're exact. But they'll still be an orb of one another for a couple years beyond that. The other thing that's been happening over the last couple of years is there's been a portal that's opened inside all of our souls and hearts that is bringing in like all new energies, all new truth and new love that's coming through all of us. And that started back in March of 2014, because that's when there was the spring equinox with the eclipse, the Pisces eclipse, and that started, for all practical purposes, the eclipse season of spring of 2014. And then in April of 2014, there was a Grand Cross, a Cardinal Grand Cross. And that Cardinal Grand Cross kind of brought on this 18-month shift and change in our world, and this portal opening up with new love and new truth coming through. And so that 18-month period is coming to an end now too, as we go through this current eclipse season, which is both eclipses will be in September, are in September. So when you take a look at the 2012 through 2015, and then you take a look at the last couple of years with the eclipses, we know that right now is the time when we are going through immense change internally in our personal lives and in our global structure. Let's just look at the global structure, for instance. Back in the 60s, there was a lot of civil rights movements that were going on then, both for African Americans, for women. And now, as we switch to Uranus square Pluto at this time, we see civil rights movements that have been happening for our LGBT community. And that has just happened over these last couple of years, that people have really said, you know, marriage for gays and rights for transsexuals, transvestites, that this is all we are moving through now for civil rights. So you can see the comparison between those two time periods. Also back then, people were against the system that was being built. They wanted to take down that system. Well, you get those kind of talks again, especially when people are talking about the economic system that we're in. Take Bernie Sanders, for instance. He's out there talking about how the disparity between rich and poor is so great that, you know, we can't live. Average people cannot live on this earth any longer. And if you think you got it bad in America, go to some other countries around the world. You'll find that they really can't do anything. They're making $1, $2 an hour trying to feed their families. They have to give away their daughters, or at least they think they have to give away their daughters so that they can live. People are giving away kidneys and parts of their bodies so that they have enough money to live on. So this structure that we're living in on the earth, economically, is just not working anymore. We knew it back in the 60s and 70s, and people are waking up to that same notion again now. The political system, people back then, when Uranus and Pluto were conjunct, knew that the political system was filled with a bunch of crooks. Now people are beginning to realize the same thing again. That's why they're voting for, or apparently going to vote for, people like Bernie Sanders, and even someone who, you may not think very much of, Donald Trump. At least he's outside of the political system. So people are definitely ready for big change right now. I remember back in the late 60s, early 70s, there was the Vietnam War going on, and people were speaking out about peace, and let's end war on the earth. And now we're up against, President Obama has made a peace pact with the nuclear program for Iran, and that is an attempt to make more peace on the earth as opposed to war. So that issue's back up again, that we need on this earth peace and connection between people. I think the deeper issue is about connection. I think most of us have been brought up in a world, even through our religions all too often, where there's a sense of separation between people, between souls, between hearts. And in reality, if you can tune into that frequency, it's about connection. It's about we're all one, we're all part of the same family. And if we continue to act as if people that are different than us are our enemies, or at least people that we should have some kind of conflict with all the nuclear weapons that we have built on this earth, it's only a matter of time before we wipe ourselves out. So as we're moving into this Aquarian age, more and more people are awakening to the fact that everyone is connected and we're all part of the same family. It becomes really necessary to get that the way the world is right now, because in so many ways we are connected, like transportation, communication, the economic system. Everybody is connected in those ways. But if we don't learn that we're connected from our hearts and souls too, I think that's the last thing we need to learn about the connections, is we're all one. And when you know that you're all one and you recognize the connections, you also at the same time automatically start to see the world in a meaningful light, as opposed to it's all about randomness. So this is what the Aquarian age is. In fact, if I put it in a succinct way, I'd say it's diversity within unity. So it's the acceptance of all of us being different, but that we're all unified even though we're all different. So now we're up in September, and we have these two eclipses. The first one will be on September 13th, and that'll be a Virgo new moon solar eclipse. And that'll be on the 12th into the 13th, depending on where you live. If you're in Europe, you'll be on the 13th. If you're on the East Coast here, it's the 13th, but it's the 12th if you're on the West Coast in the United States. And then the second eclipse will be on September 27th, and that one will be a total lunar eclipse, full moon in Aries. So, when there's a new moon, it means that the sun and the moon are exactly in the same place in the zodiac. So, for instance, on the Virgo solar eclipse new moon, that means the sun and the moon are both exactly at 20 plus degrees of Virgo. Then on a full moon lunar eclipse, it means that the sun and moon are opposite from one another. So the sun will be in Libra at that time, on the 27th, and the moon will be in Aries. So let's go to the first one first. Well, let me say first that, these last couple of years for everybody have been really a lot of turmoil, especially people that are kind of tuned in, because people that are tuned in or sensitive to the energies and the changes actually in some ways seem to go through more, because it's necessary for those people to go through the process of evolution aligned with moving into the age of Aquarius. So that's why there's a lot more turmoil. A lot more positive change too happens to people like that are more sensitive. But you also go through a lot more pain. And people have gone through a lot of painful experiences personally over the last couple of years. And around relationships too. People have gone through a lot. And if a person's in a relationship for a long period of time. And then we have these big waves of change that are coming now. And then maybe one person is changing and evolving and the other person isn't. Well, then that causes a problem in the relationship that they either work out by splitting up from one another or finding out ways that they can reconnect even though there's changes going on. Jobs, same thing. People have certain careers and certain jobs, and then when all these big changes come, they feel that the job that they're on is really not authentic to who they are, to their true self, and so they start not wanting to be on that job anymore. They look for a new career, a new job. Home, same thing. You can be living in a place for, many, many years, and then when the big changes come, you look around you and you say, God, this isn't me anymore where I'm at, and so then you make changes of where you're going to live. And then internally, the same thing. Like a lot of patterns that we have in relationship or just patterns in life that we have are because of early traumas or early wounds that we have. And then when you get these big eclipses that come and these big changes on the earth, we get these wounds and these traumas get thrown right into our face in a bigger way than they normally are in our everyday world. And as they get thrown into our face, we have the opportunity of healing, of releasing, and by releasing, that helps the healing, and by releasing, we're creating a space for the new energies to come in. So when you go through a lot of pain around these old patterns that are coming in your face, I know how painful it is, but at the same time, it's an opportunity to let go of things that are going to stand in the way of you evolving the way you need to evolve in alignment with the new age that we're moving into. So this first eclipse will be in Virgo, and like I said, a little over 20 degrees of Virgo. And when things are in Virgo, it's time to make things real. Like it's real easy to have like ideas that are idealistic, notions about change of ourselves and the world. But when things move into Virgo, like this solar eclipse new moon is, it's time to make it real. It's time to look at it straight on and say, how do I ground all the things that I've been believing in? How do I find ways of organizing it and making it work, especially in simple ways, because Virgo likes things to be simplistic, likes things to be like not grandiose in any way, or not complicated, but simple with the earth, with my body, with the practical side of life. So that's what a lot of this new moon is going to be. It's going to make things quite real. And Virgo is also a sign that's very much of service. So, there's more of a sense that whatever I have to give is going to be of service to something greater than myself. And so that's something that you might get more in tune with as we go through this solar eclipse. And that's only a few days away. This is the day I'm speaking is, I think, the 10th. So 3 days from when I'm speaking is when the actual solar eclipse will be. And what you find when you run into eclipses is you get taken out of your normal balance somewhat. Like if you're like holding on to things being a certain way, like you're maybe with the habits you've got every day, or just the way you interact with people, or the way you just are in life, whatever balance you've created, usually when an eclipse comes around, it takes you off of that balance. It makes you feel like things are changing, because when you're totally under control, change doesn't happen that way. It only happens when we're like taking off our balance a little bit, because then we're kind of moving with the change. So you can expect that with each eclipse, is being able to be taken out of your same old, so that you can let change in. But you'll often find that there's breakdowns of things that aren't right for you anymore, but at the same time there's huge breakthroughs into new ways of being, new breakthroughs into new patterns, new energies, new people that happens at these eclipses. So the second eclipse will be on the 27th, and this one is a total full moon lunar eclipse. 3 days before that, Pluto will be changing directions, going from retrograde to direct. And Pluto is a very powerful transformational energy that creates a lot of intensity in its energy field, and is about like the death of the old and the birth of something new. So that will be a theme as we're just moving into that lunar eclipse, even before we're there. And then the lunar eclipse is this total full moon lunar eclipse. And there's a lot of writing on the internet about this. I don't know how many of you have been searching, but even like the whole month of September, there's all sorts of people talking about doom and gloom, and there's a lot of religious people, right-wing religious people, that are talking about Messiah coming, and about the end of the world. There are 4 blood moons in a row there have been, meaning there's 4 lunar eclipses in a row over the last couple of years that have been total lunar eclipses, and that's what makes them blood moons. And every single one has fallen on a Jewish holiday. So that's why some of the more right-wing people and Judaically oriented people are thinking that it's something very connected to Israel. And that's got some possibility to it, because there's a lot swirling around the Middle East right now and around Israel, which is very angry at the nuclear deal that's been done with Iran. And so I would not be surprised if there are events over the next month or two that are centered around Israel. But to talk about the end of the world and things like that, I mean, come on. I've been doing this for a long time, and it seems like every few years is the end of the world. 2012, remember, everybody, oh, it's the end of the world, it's 2012, December 2000, and that didn't happen. So it's not going to be the end of the world this time either, but the end of the world as we know it, I think it's the beginning of that. I think there's a lot that's going to start crashing down even more. You see the economy, what's happened over the last few weeks or a month. And even if it rallies a little bit soon, which I don't think it's going to very much, but even if it does rally a little bit, it's not going to be for long, because the current economy that we're operating under cannot support the human beings on this earth, as we said earlier today. So there's got nowhere to go but to go down, because we need a system that's fair for all the humans on this earth. Now, I know a lot of you say, yeah, but these people that are in power, they can't ever let go of that power, and this system is going to stay just the way it is. Look back 1,000 years, we've always had the rich people running everything. Yeah, well, just because things have been that way in the past doesn't mean that's the way they're going to stay. So, especially when you're moving into a new age, and this new age is about equality. It's Aquarius. Look up the sign Aquarius, you'll find that it's about equality. So, since that's the age we're moving into, we're going to learn how to be more sharing with everything on the earth. That's going to happen. When you take a look again at that Bernie Sanders who's speaking of those things, it doesn't mean he'll get elected, but it does mean that he's representing an awful lot of people who feel that way now. And if you think it's only felt that way in this country, you're wrong. It's felt all over the earth. So when you think these people have power and they'll never let it go, well, maybe they would never purposely let it go, but nature and the universe are much more powerful than we are as humans, and we can hold back the tide, just like we can put ourselves on life support systems when it's time to die, so we can extend our life a little bit longer. But the fact that we're on life support systems does not change the fact that nature's going to have us die, and this system that we are living under, it is going to die. And whether that's going to be a dramatically horrible death or whether it's going to be one that's more graceful, that we do have control over as human beings, collectively. If we are moving with, just like this happens in your personal lives too, by the way, if you're sensing the change and you're moving with the change and you're releasing and letting go of that which is not right anymore, then the changes and the transformation can happen more gracefully. But if you're holding on for dear life, and if these people that have all the money and the privilege are holding on for dear life, that means that the process could get uglier in order to get people to be forced to let go of that which is not right for our human community anymore. So this second eclipse should be pretty powerful, the one in Aries. And it's Libra Aries, Sun in Libra, Moon in Aries. So what happens then is it's because Libra is about a peace and Aries is about conflict. So you'll have that in your personal life and should be in the global world too. How much do we fight for peace here, and how much do we fight for our own needs? And I'm not saying our own needs in a bad way, because when it's balanced, Aries and Libra, what it means is Aries is I'm true to myself and I'm going to take care of myself, and that's good. And Libra is I'm going to do what's right for us together. And that's good when it's balanced. When those things are out of balance, Libra will accommodate without any sense of self at all, and that's not good. And Aries will take care of itself selfishly without any concern for the relationship, and that's not good. But when they're together, Libra and Aries, it's perfect. It's the relationship and the individual needs together. So as this second eclipse comes around, that's something that you might want to concentrate on in your relationships, is how do I strike a balance between keeping this relationship together, listening to the other person on the one hand, and on the other hand, I have to stand strong with what my beliefs are and what my needs are. And then you'll get through this eclipse well if you keep that in mind. And again, that eclipse will be the same way. And it's a full moon this time. So in some ways, full moons are even more powerful than new moons. And again, there'll be a releasing of that which is not working anymore and an embracing of that which is right for you. The issues in the greater world, are going to get more and more profound so that we can change this world. I'm sure that some of the conflicts that are out there between countries will probably get worse before they get better because people haven't learned some of those lessons yet. But I can promise you, from my knowledge, the best of my knowledge anyway, that ultimately we're moving into this new age in Aquarius. And nothing's going to stop that. If our intentions are good, it'll happen more gracefully, but it's going to happen no matter what. So at the end of this eclipse season, this one here, we will have finished up that 18-month period, and the Uranus-Pluto will no longer have any exact connections. That doesn't mean that transformation ends. What it means is that we've made it through the gateway of transformation. And it'll be time to move forward in our lives and in our global lives with what we have gone through over these last 18 months and over these last 3 years, Uranus and Pluto. So transformation will continue. But the rough part of getting through the doorway, that part we'll have. So transformation will continue, but not exactly in the same way. So I'm Leo Knighton Tallarico, and I think John will put up, my friend John, who does these videos, will put up some, my blog and my website and things like that. So stay tuned for that if you're interested. And thanks a lot. It was my pleasure.